Do you think you can ignore a court order? Huh? You think you can run?
Please.
You're done making a scene in my courtroom.
Officer, that's enough.
Don't move. The command sliced through the courtroom air as Janelle felt her back slam against the cold wall. Papers scattered at her feet, her badge lying inches away, ignored, dismissed. The officer's eyes held a hostility she'd seen before, but never this close, never this violent. She searched the room for someone, anyone to speak up, but every face stayed silent, frozen. Then the courtroom doors opened, and everything shifted. A single sentence was about to expose a truth that would topple the balance of power. This is the story of the officer who attacked the woman destined to outrank. Him, Janelle had always believed the courtroom was a place where truth rose above power. As a legal researcher with a reputation for meticulousness, fairness, and unshakable calm, she spent her days surrounded by towering stacks of case files and quiet confidence. Her dream had always been simple: to help build a justice system that protected people who looked like her, people who were too often silenced, ignored, or dismissed. Every morning she walked through the heavy glass doors of the county courthouse with purpose. She carried her notebooks, her thermos, her worn leather briefcase, symbols of the steady, predictable rhythm of her life. The security officers knew her by name. The clerks greeted her with warm smiles. Even the judges, wrapped in their black robes of authority, treated her with a respect she had earned through years of diligence. But beneath that polished routine, Janelle understood the reality. Justice was not blind, not always. She saw the patterns in sentencing, the faces that appeared more often in cuffs than in suits, the quiet biases whispered between lines of legal text. Still, she kept faith in the idea that one person could shift the balance, even if only slightly, outside of work. She lived quietly, morning jogs before sunrise, weekend calls with her mother, volunteering at the youth center where she once learned the power of her own voice. She moved through life with intention, avoiding conflict whenever possible, believing that her steady presence was a form of resistance in itself. Yet lately, a tension lingered in the courthouse halls, a stiffness in certain greetings. This sideways glance seemed to follow her. Something unspoken hung in the air, like a storm waiting for its cue to break. And on the morning it finally did. Janelle walked into the courthouse, unaware that her world was about to collide with a force so violent, so unexpected that it would alter her place in that building forever. The day began like any other, but the courthouse felt different the moment Janelle stepped inside. The lobby, usually buzzing with voices, footsteps, and echoing conversations, seemed unusually tense. A cluster of officers stood near the metal detectors, their murmurs low, their eyes sharp. She noticed the shift but brushed it off, tightening her grip on her briefcase as she made her way toward the elevators. What she didn't realize was that a new deputy had been assigned to courtroom security that morning. His name was Officer Rourke, and while she didn't know him, she could feel the weight of his stare before she even reached the hallway. He watched her approach, a suspicion clinging to the air like static. She gave a polite nod, one she offered all staff, regardless of rank. But his expression didn't change. If anything, it hardened. As she entered the courtroom to deliver documents for a hearing, she sensed him following behind her. His boots thundered on the floor with an aggressive rhythm, each step closer than necessary. She tried to ignore it, reminding herself that she had every right to be there. But the unease crawled under her skin, tightening her breath. She placed the folders on the clerk's desk, preparing to leave, when suddenly a harsh voice shattered the silence. "Hey, you! Stop!" It wasn't the tone of a question. It was the tone of an accusation. Janelle turned slowly, conscious of how quickly situations could escalate when someone like her was perceived as out of place or out of line. Officer Rourke stood only a few feet away, one hand hovering near his belt, the other pointing directly at her. The room went still. Even the judge's portraits on the walls seemed to watch. "You don't belong back here," he growled. "Let me see your credentials." Janelle held out her ID badge, the same one she had used for years, the same one every other officer accepted without question. Rourke snatched it from her hand, glaring at it with exaggerated scrutiny, as if searching for something to justify the hostility already burning in his eyes. "This isn't valid," he said flatly. "A lie." a blatant one. The clerk opened their mouth to speak, but Rourke shot them a warning glance, and they fell silent. The imbalance of power was suffocating. Janelle felt it pressing down on her chest, heavier with every passing second. She calmly explained her position, her department, and her assignment for the morning. Her voice remained steady, she couldn't afford for it not to. But inside, her pulse hammered with the familiar fear that came from being wrongly targeted. She had seen countless cases just like this one from the other side of the table. But now she was living the same injustice she had fought so hard to expose. Rourke stepped closer. Too close. His voice dropped into a low, mocking tone. Funny, you people always have a story. The air cracked with the weight of those words. The courtroom staff froze. No one spoke. No one intervened. Then, without warning, Rourke grabbed her arm, tight, forceful, pushing her back toward the wall with a brutality that stunned even those watching. Papers scattered from her briefcase. Her breath caught. The cold concrete pressed hard against her spine, and in that moment, everything she thought she knew about her workplace, the respect, the safety, the stability, shattered. What she didn't yet know was that the judge himself was about to enter the room, and nothing would ever be the same after that. The courtroom doors swung open with a sharp crack. But Officer Rourke didn't flinch. His grip on Janelle only tightened, pressing her harder against the wall, as if her mere presence threatened the order he imagined he was protecting. Her breath came in shallow bursts, her arm aching beneath his unyielding hold. The room felt smaller, the air thick with a silence that screamed louder than any protest she could voice. Judge Holden stepped inside, his robe trailing behind him like a shadow of authority. He was known for his composed demeanor, a man who rarely raised his voice. But the moment his eyes landed on the scene before him, Rourke, pinning Janelle to the wall, her badge discarded on the floor, his expression changed. It wasn't confusion. It was disbelief. Then anger Rourke didn't notice. He was too absorbed in his own power, leaning close enough for Janelle to feel the heat of his breath. I said, "Stay still," he hissed, as if she had moved at all. And then, in a voice that cut through the room like a blade, Judge Holden spoke. "Officer, step away from her." Rourke turned, annoyed, ready to justify himself. But the judge was already advancing. Each step echoed like thunder. The staff held their breath. Even Rourke's confidence faltered for a split second. But not enough. Not yet. "She was trespassing," he insisted. "She doesn't have clearance." "I was handling it." Judge Holden stopped inches away from him. "Handling," he repeated, voice low. "Is that what you call assaulting my newly appointed chief of staff?" The room gasped, and Rourke froze. "Dear audience, where are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments." Silence washed over the courtroom, heavier than any gavel strike. Officer Rourke's face drained of color as the title settled into the air, Chief of Staff. Janelle felt the pressure on her arm disappear as he stumbled back, suddenly aware of the enormity of what he'd done. The clerk rushed forward to help her, their hands shaking, eyes wide with remorse for not stepping in sooner. Judge Holden didn't look away from Rourke as he called 2 senior deputies into the room, his voice stern, unyielding, and edged with disappointment more profound than anger. As they escorted Rourke out, Janelle stood quietly, steadying her breath. She didn't feel triumphant. She didn't feel vindicated. She felt the familiar weight of what it meant to simply exist in a world that questioned her presence, her authority, her right to stand where she stood. Even her new title hadn't protected her, not from prejudice, not from assumptions, not from the reflexive hostility she had just endured. Judge Holden approached her, his tone softening. He apologized, not as a superior, but as a human acknowledging a wound he hadn't caused but couldn't ignore. She nodded, grateful yet exhausted, because this moment wasn't about a single officer. It was about the countless moments that went unnoticed, unchallenged, unresolved. When she walked out of the courtroom, the halls felt different, not safer, but more precise. She understood now that her role wasn't just administrative. It was symbolic. It was necessary. It was overdue. And for anyone watching her story, one question lingered. How many more lives must be bruised before justice protects us all? Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more powerful stories and new videos.